Hello, my name is Kareem Abulnaga, and I founded Practice in 2010 to ensure that no child's circumstance limits their potential. As a first-generation American with 6 siblings raised by a single mother on government aid in Queens, New York, I know firsthand the challenges many of our scholars face in the classroom and at home. Partnering with hundreds of schools across thousands of classrooms and serving tens of thousands of scholars, I also intimately understand how demanding the job of a teacher can be. This is why we established partnerships with schools to place education champions. In this introduction, I want to share with you what we expect of our education champions, what we expect of you, and some tips to help us establish a successful partnership. The title Education Champion was inspired by the late Rita Pierson, who believed every child deserves a champion, an adult who will never give up on them, who understands the power of connection, and insists that they become the best that they can possibly be. Our education champions are committed to scholar success, have pursued a college education, and often come from the communities they're placed, increasing the likelihood that they look like the scholars they support. Every year, we receive thousands of applications for our education champion positions. We then narrow those down to meet the specific availability and needs of our partner school. The process of finding the right education champion could be as short as a week, but depending on the location and the specifications, in some rare cases, it could take upwards of 2 months. We're constantly working on reducing the turnaround time. After a successful match is identified, our education champions are then background checked and have a few days to complete their synchronized onboarding and asynchronous training, which covers our expectations, instructional best practices, and relationship building. Our education champions do not receive any training on curricula or your school-specific culture. Research shows that the support is most effective when it's aligned to what students are learning in their classes. For that reason, we don't have a standardized curriculum when our education champions are matched to a school. That's where you come in. We expect that you will help the education champion in understanding and unpacking the curriculum you're using. This could be through quick huddles while the class is working on an activity, scheduling a professional development session with the school's curriculum coach, or even directing them to resources where they can self-study. And then, of course, providing them with feedback as they're implementing with the scholars in your classroom. Each week, you will receive an email with a satisfaction survey from our operations team to check in on the quality of the program at your school. Based on the response, we rate the status of the program. If we need additional insight before we connect with the education champion to share good or constructive feedback, we will follow up. If for any reason you're unsatisfied with your education champion, please let our team know ASAP. Your school does not need to wait for our weekly satisfaction email to provide feedback. Our education champions are trained to notify you and their practice supervisor if they have a scheduled or last-minute absence. However, if for any reason there's an unreported absence, you should reach out to our team immediately. Because we are not in your classroom every day, we can only monitor the progress of our education champions based on the timeliness of their clocking in and out and the quality of the notes they're sharing with our team. All right, now that we're done with the housekeeping, let's talk about how to make the most of your education champion. Teachers often share with us that having an education champion in their classroom is a gift because it's like having an extra pair of eyes on the back of their heads so they know what's happening in the classroom, and an extra set of arms so they can double the amount of support their scholars get when they're there. You might be wondering, how did I get so lucky? It almost never has anything to do with you and everything to do with your scholars. Your school administrator believes that the extra set of hands could go a long way for your scholars. You might have some scholars that need extra attention in your classroom, and having an education champion in there will allow you to spend more time on the most struggling scholars while the education champion supports the class. There might be a language barrier in your classroom that the education champion can help overcome through translation. Maybe your class size is slightly larger than your peers, or your school administrator has noticed that you just got that group this year and you need more support. That means the education champion is not there to take your job. Though we love it when they get certified and are recruited to work at the school they supported as an education champion. They're also not there to do your job. You are the expert. They are not. They are additional energy, and with your expertise, they can make an outsized impact in your classroom. I wish I could tell you that this support is free, but it's not. Your school administrator is making an additional investment in your classroom. Because of this, you cannot extend the days or the hours the education champion is working in your classroom. Only your school administrator can do that in partnership with us, because it impacts the pay and management of the program. As a company with a responsibility to maximize public benefit that believes in conscious capitalism, we act in a way that treats expenses as investments. So here's some tips to help you get the most out of your school's investment. Let me start with the things you shouldn't do. Research shows that adding an additional adult into a classroom does not make a difference if 1. The teacher teaches the class in the same exact way the teacher was teaching before the extra set of hands. You will need to change how you teach in order to maximize the impact of having an education champion in the room. For example, if you used to lecture the majority of the class period before, and you do the same thing with the education champion in the room, they'll effectively be one additional scholar instead of a resource. Instead, you can collaborate with your education champion by involving them in the planning. Create more time for small groups and making adjustments based on scholars' needs. Or even shorten your lecture and have the education champion support with reteaching. Not making adjustments to how you taught before you had the extra resource will result in the same outcome for your scholars. 2, the teacher alternates instruction with another teacher so they can have a break. I know you're probably thinking, if I get a break, then I'll be more refreshed for my next class. Unfortunately, the research does not back this assertion up. The education champion is also usually not a certified teacher. 3, the teacher focuses the second adult in the classroom on the administrative tasks, things like fixing the bulletin boards, walking kids to the bathroom, or grading papers. While it could be tempting to do this, it is not a good use of the investment your school is making. Most of the education champions will do what you ask them to do. One-off, that's okay, but any regular frequency should be avoided. All right, before I go on, I have to say this. Because our education champions are usually not certified teachers, they should never be left alone in a classroom with scholars. Now for the fun part, how to maximize the use of your education champion. On their first day, introduce them to the class as a positive role model who is committed to their success. Depending on when they start in the school year, you might have a few different ones, so keep this to a minute. It's just meant for the scholars to know who the extra adult in the room is. Second, share information with them. The more you share with them, the better they can support you. What kind of information you might be thinking? Anything about the lesson you're about to teach, specific ways they can help you, information about the scholars you want them to work with that could help make them more effective, including any suggested modifications. And most importantly, feedback about what's working and what's not working. The education champion in your classroom will be paying attention to the lesson you teach so they can support you with reteaching for anyone who may not have understood the material. Using best practices from their training on the least invasive forms of correction, they can hover near students who might be distracted or work one-on-one with a scholar who might need to be caught up because they missed a prior day's lesson. The education champion can also facilitate small group instruction with direction from you on the materials to use and guidance on what you want to be accomplished. They really are an extension of your team. At the end of the session, the education champion makes notes, what was worked on, and those notes are shared with our team. There you have it. Thank you for your partnership.